maritime debris and around beaches, and they actually catalog everything that they've cleaned up to kind of show what's getting into our marine environment. 340 pounds were collected from Goodies Beach in Rockport to the Camden Rockport Harbor areas and delivered to Midco Solid Waste. Rockland also, their transfer station took 2 loads of trash totaling 200 pounds. Item 4, Waste Watch volunteers are working with Swap Shop volunteers to generate a list of community nonprofits and other organizations that accept lightly used donations. This will help the Swap Shop attendants direct visitors who are dropping things that they don't need or accept, and they find an alternate place for them to avoid having them come into the waste stream. Thank you very much, and let us know if there's anything else that is needed. So that's the report from Waste Watch. Any questions that I can't answer? Great. Item F. Item F is the election of officers for the corporation. This is part of our annual organizational meeting. I would accept nominations for chair at this time. Please don't everyone jump at once. Someone's thought this through.
I mean, of course, my first choice would be for you to continue to do it because I think you've done a great job. But I also recognize that it's a huge amount of work, and maybe there are others that need to, if you need to share that burden or pass it on, I think. But I would just like to say that I think you've done a really tremendous job, and you've contributed immeasurably to this difficult time, and we couldn't have asked for a better chair, so thank you. And
Very much. Thanks to the executive committee very much.
If I might ask, what's your position on a nomination for chair?
Awesome. Yeah, I've thought about this quite a bit. If you all want me to stay on, considering we have a new manager and the executive committee has done an awesome job, I will accept that, but I'm not asking for it. If there's another board member that has the support of the board that is capable of doing that job, which a lot of you are, I have absolutely no problem with that. But if you want me to continue in this role for another year, I'm willing to do that.
I mean, I do think there are other people that could do it if we needed to. I think Mike's done a great job running the meetings when he runs them, and certainly like the way Bob runs things in Camden, but
Still just
depends
wait
on
for
whether you feel.
nominations. If you all want me to do it, I'll continue to do it, but
Should we solicit an opinion from your wife first?
Well, that's what, yeah.
we've talked about this.
I value my friendship with Marcy a lot, and I'm conflicted.
Just a question.
I mean, the hope is clearly that with Breedy on board, we have a professional at the helm that will significantly lighten the load of what we've all been dealing with for the last 8 months or so. And with that and his spinning up into this position nicely, and the executive committee having a good, solid body of knowledge, I mean, my plan was to try to just continue to help Breedy in any way that I could as a member, as the board chair, as whatever you all want me to be. So it's not going to be, I've kind of baked this whole thing into my schedule, so it's not like a huge big deal anymore.
You shouldn't have to be doing, if you have to continue doing the amount of work you've been doing, then there's a huge problem. So,
So that's why I anticipate the load going
Yeah,
back down
exactly.
to working on setting the agenda.
You've got more than one load. I wondered which load you're talking about. This load here only, or your South Thomaston or Thomaston?
Oh, no. South Thomaston's okay. I mean, that's why I come into solid waste on Fridays, Saturdays, sometimes Sundays and Monday mornings. But I won't have to do that anymore because now Breedy's here. So the items of which go along with being the board chair and just the board chair and not an active management member of the executive committee are significantly different. So like I get to just approve agendas and conduct meetings and hear from you great people. and not, I'll probably still go in anyway, just to hang out with Bob, because he's funny. So,
Well, then I would move that we elect Owen as our chair. No, I would nominate, sorry, I would nominate Owen as our chair.
A second.
there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Am I supposed to abstain?
No, I don't think so at all. No. It's not according to the MMA Municipal Officers Manual.
Okay, and you're voting against it?
No,
Oh, I thought you had your hand down.
yeah, we voted for it.
Gotcha.
Call for the nays.
So did everyone vote for that?
Yeah, call for the nays.
Call for the nays and you'll find
Are
out.
there any nays?
That's easy.
Great, okay. Thank you. Are there nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Mike Brown.
Is there a second?
Second that.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Bam. Just put your hand up. I had to do it. There you go. Then it's unanimous.
And you could always just like, when you're tired too, you can say, you know what, Mike, why don't you practice running the meetings and share that a little bit more?
Do we have a secretary?
I got a few last minute phone calls.
Karen, are you our secretary? Was secretary not supposed to
David
be on
Barris, I
there?
think, is our secretary.
David.
You're our secretary?
Yeah, I'm on
Yeah.
secretary.
I knew you were personnel committee chair, but
Well, that's because.
I think that's 'cause he's secretary.
secretary is the,
Personnel committee.
I nominate David Barrows for the secretary.
there's a nomination.
Second.
There's a second.
We're down to 2011 and one,
Second,
according to the paperwork.
Down until when?
I believe so. If you go back and go look on the,
Oh, would we vote you in?
page. I mean, I don't care, I will do it anyway, no matter where I'm on there or not, doesn't matter.
Wait a minute.
I'm pretty sure that it said that I was still on there.
I do. My second.
Well, but
I
that's,
also seconded.
Okay, we have 3 seconds.
Do we need to resolve that before we do a vote on that? All right, is there any further discussion on the
these are
secretary?
all one-year terms.
They're
I
all
mean-
one-year terms.
They're all one-year
Yep.
terms, so
Are we talking about the,
the secretary for the board, one-year
one-year
terms, they're
term.
all one-year terms.
Yeah, what was that?
They're all one-year terms.
Yeah.
Yep. So I made the motion, I should nominate you, it was seconded.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Come on, man. Thank you.
I don't vote for myself, I abstain.
To do the same thing. Nominations for treasurer. Bob, can you nominate Allison, please?
I nominate Allison Matrika.
Thank you.
Second,
All those in favor?
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Great.
thank you.
What does votes for mean?
You just want to learn all of our names.
Name tags. I get that
So it has been proposed, and I think smartly, that maybe we just go with the exact same committee member assignments and slate. I think we've kind of worked into those roles and reorganizing them now where they were kind of reorganized, like 4 months ago or something? Doesn't seem to make much sense. So do we want to approve the existing slate of committee members as laid out on this sheet of paper?
I
I think
move,
we're missing it.
What's the
We
difference?
are?
What's the difference between that piece of
Committee.
paper and
See
this
if you
piece
can
of paper?
find the governance committee.
it's here.
One's
It's right here at the
newer?
bottom.
Okay, this, okay.
It's in two,
No, it's on this piece of paper.
Oh, a different
which, there's 2 pieces of paper.
board of
committees
directors.
listed.
I don't know what the heck that is, but
That one that you're looking at, Bob, is
Oh,
kind of
to
like our
that form,
contact
okay.
sheet, but it does have everyone's stuff listed. What I don't know is if that is current, but I do know that this is current.
So I move that we approve the committee slate as set forth on the document called Midco Solid Waste Corporation Subcommittee Assignments FY '20.
That's a motion.
Are they subcommittees or committees?
Subcommittee. Well, to be honest, like, that's weird to me because we
Okay, but
call them
that's-
committees. It says subcommittee.
Committees.
But the document says subcommittee, so I'm just identifying the document.
I second that.
To identify the document. Perfect. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor? That was unanimous, correct?
Right.
Yes.
Good. Beth, do you need us to slow down any? Do you need us to slow down any for the minutes? Perfect. All right. Item G is to state the weighted votes for FY 2020, which are, thank you, Camden, 42.56%, Hope, 9.81%, Lincolnville, 16.96%, and Rockport, 30.67%. To be completely honest, I don't really know where I go from there, other than do we accept that weighted vote? I think we just state it.
I think so too.
I think we need to go a little further and perhaps ask for vote, and then that would give a first and a second, and then an opportunity for discussion. Would that be appropriate, you think, under the circumstances?
The weighted votes are determined by the interlocal agreement, right?
Yes, that's absolutely true.
So there's nothing to
There's nothing
approve,
to
is
vote
there?
on.
Organization.
I mean, it's, as long as it's factual, we would just want to be checking math
Yeah, as
there.
long as it's calculated
If there's
correctly.
an error, we should talk about it.
That brings up
So.
No, I'm trying to think.
So at this time, I think it's, you read the weighted votes, and that's what's in the interlocal agreement.
Right.
But it's on the governance committee's list of things to do to
Yeah.
review and/or recommend adjustments if necessary. So I think right now, we're just, yes, that's what it is. We all know that. I think that's what it is.
And I think, because
Plus,
Wendy,
we also have some,
come up and over. So until the governance committee was formed, it was on the table and pushed off,
Yeah.
and brought it back and pushed off and back.
And-
Now it's.
and that's why it's on, no, that's why it's on the, it's on the governance.
So the governance committee needs to make a recommendation with respect to any changes to the interlocal agreement or any of the other governing documents, right? And then that comes before the board, and it's not until the board voted on changing any of that, then it would, before it changes. So
And
it
Wendy-
is what it is until then.
yeah, and Wendy, I'm always happy to put it on the agenda for discussion. The reason that we're not going to do that is that we can't actually change this even by a 100% vote of this.
I
Yeah,
understood that.
yeah.
As far
Yeah.
as
Right.
bringing it up through that,
Yeah.
and then back to the board.
All right, so we have stated the weights for the 1920 year.
And I'm assuming somebody checked all that math, or did we just take last year and,
I do want to make a note that there was a confusion with the approved budget due to some electrical amount of money. So when you look at I just confirmed with Jody that this is the budget that we're following for the year. This is the actual final approved budget. There was some confusion about that. I did these last month, so I'm going to assume I used the right one. So we may want to just double check them, but, and I apologize because it's just crossed my mind today, that right
Talking
now.
about the weighted votes?
we'll just bring it up if we need to bring it up next time, we
If-
will.
If there was
Not
an,
correct.
If somebody had a reassessment or a,
That's
Because we're
the,
not voting on them, right?
wait a minute, that's the budget, right? Not the weighted
Yeah, weighted
votes.
votes is
That's
different.
Okay.
nothing to do with money.
The percentages are as they are, yeah. I
Not the
just wanted
percentages,
to,
but the amounts, right? We're doing it off.
yeah.
As far as the assessments this time.
yeah, we'll review all that
Wanted to
and
make it-
bring it to the board at the next meeting to let you know if that was an accurate thing or if we need to restate them going forward. Okay, item H is a increase on construction demolition debris pricing and the fee schedule. Brady, did you want to take an opportunity to address these
Yes, would
items?
it be appropriate to?
Yep.
Would it be appropriate to speak to this increase at this time? We instituted $40 more per ton fee was instituted yesterday for the first time. One of the things that I went out to the gatehouse and sat in there for a couple of hours to observe. And of course, even though I know that notice went out, I guess a minimum of 30 days, maybe a lot of people didn't read or keep up with the fact that the increase was coming. So I did a lot of explaining as to the fact that the $100 per ton prior fee and the fact that it's 40 is more in line with our competitors and what's being charged at the other gates, at transfer stations and landfills. And that was pretty much a general assumption that got from my staff and from Beth, that was part of the reasoning behind the board's raising the rate, because we were prematurely or artificially depressed or lower than, I guess, market would have been. So we just got up to that. Second, I had to ensure that folks knew that we were not profiting off of the increase. It wasn't to create profits, because as a corporation, we're not about profiting. We're just about supporting the operations, the cost of the operations, payroll, operational costs, landfill and things of that nature. So for the most part, people understood. Now, a lot of people were just questioning this that weren't even there to even pay the fee. And another thing that I noticed is that we've had what is referred to here as runners, what I know them as is drive-offs, where a commercial hauler will come in, weigh in, go into the landfill and dump, and then drive out without going back over the inbound scale and getting a net tare weight and coming into the scale house to pay. So what I've done tacitly is to ask our gatekeepers to, gatehouse people to ask to hold on to a driver's license of those commercial haulers that we are not familiar with. Now, the people that we know, the people we trust, we know that have integrity and do their job, not an issue, because we don't want to get everybody upset. But the people we don't know, and that even some we might suspect might drive off, and there was one gentleman who I think we did stop him from doing that. So that's what we're doing right now. But in addition to asking for the license, we also want to write down license plates. Now, I wrote up. Okay,
Real quick, if I may.
Yes.
Was it 2 meetings ago? Oh, it was 2 months ago, because we skipped a month. We currently own and possess cameras, and we want to bring those up. So I'm cool with everything that the Gatehouse folks are doing, but just wanted to throw it out there that we, as a board, have already discussed and approved installing these cameras as a way, and we've talked with the police chief, and we understand exactly how we're going to report these things out in a process for that. But a blending of the two seems great as well.
Yes.
I mean, I think we may want to talk a little bit more about taking the licenses, because it sounds simple and logical, but deciding who you take the licenses from is a little, anybody that goes over that scale, it's not just huge, big commercial haulers. It might be just like, me with some brush in the back of my trailer. And oftentimes, I might not have my license, or somebody might not have their license. And I'm not sure that that's a fight that we want to get in. I can see it turning into like, well, I know that this person just went through without having to do that, and why do I have to do it? And I don't have my, I'm a person that loses my license from time to time. And I don't know if, would just writing down license plate numbers be acceptable? I think it might be a big can of worms that.
And I agree, I don't disagree. And that's why I was asking the gatehouse people who have more familiarity with their customer base to use their discretion and have a certain amount of autonomy. And it is unofficial in the sense that some of the commercial haulers we've asked have not had any issue just leaving the license until they came in to pay. Because, we're only cash or check, no credit card. And only the ones that the gatekeepers don't recognize or have a large volume of commercial C&D waste. Someone like you coming through, that's not our issue. That's not what we're concerned about. Even if you were to drive off, that wouldn't be a concern. But you're right now.
As long as they're on board with it, but you might want to.
Well, you're right. You're not wrong, because Beth was telling me if we're going to do this, we need to be consistent. And that brings me to my next point. I believe that this, as I've observed the gatehouse, that we should at a minimum have 2 attendants at all times.
I agree with that.
That protects the integrity of the process, the integrity of the chain of custody of funding going back and forth. I just, not trying to suggest anything, I just think that is just good practices to have 2. And because of the traffic that I see in, one person is, there are people who are going by, and one person is busy trying to give change or get bags, or even give a dog one of the biscuits.
Right.
But then there's someone driving through, and I've noticed that as they wave, if we wave back, they take that as, oh, come on in, when a lot of people are coming in and what they have is unidentified. And you should never have a landfill have anything come in that you don't know what it is, and what its nature is, and where they're going and what they're doing. So that would be something I want to work on and address, and I'll bring that to the board's attention in a little more detail once I've worked out what I think would be a standard operating procedure that would work for us.
And just one thing to build on that, it's been my observation sometimes, especially on our heavy flow days, that there has some tendency to have a backup around the gate, and so cars get closer and closer to the road. One of my other kind of concerns, or just something to think about, is the whole taking and giving back of an item takes up time. So I would encourage you to try to get those cameras set up as quickly as possible, because then folks can flow through normally, and when we identify that someone has done something, we can go back and review that, just because it's not a huge amount of space that we have to stack cars between the gatehouse and the road, but just things to think about.
Well, I've thought about it, and in fact, I believe the gatehouse may necessarily have to be relocated, so we have more ingress in, and it's possible, but these are major things. Again, I'm not talking about doing anything this year, but it is on my mind about, as I look at traffic flow and the placement of where the gatehouse is and backing up, because I've thought about having a gate where the arm comes down for each person, one at a time, in and out. Everybody's hurry up in a hurry, and we also do have people who are just coming in there for the swap shop, which I think might need to have its own separate entrance or drive, and then we have people who are just coming in for the recycling. But then we have to differentiate between our customers who are paying to come in and dispose of MSW and commercial waste.
David?
Just a comment on the procedures and everything of it. We have cameras up to work. I work in Rankin's, a hardware store down the road from you guys, not the one closer, the further away one. And we've had real good luck with just the fact that people that forget to pay or whatever, we pick up license plate numbers, we pick up descriptions of the vehicle on a regular basis. Anybody that we know, we can get usually 4 guys together and look at the camera and say, oh, well, that's so-and-so, and pick up the phone and make a call and say, hey, come back and pay me. Randy does a very good job at going and sending an officer over, and we've had to do that a couple of times this year and have people come back and get banned from this place, because that's our procedure, is if you rip us off when we catch you, pay us and don't ever come back.
Understood. Well, I know that the cameras would be passive. There would be no eye behind the camera. So anything that we're looking at would be after the fact. So we wouldn't necessarily be able to respond immediately. We'd have to come back, and maybe that might present a problem. But yes, I do agree that we should have cameras for anything, at the very least, for security purposes, and to document what's going in and out of our landfill.
1 second, Brady. Kern?
So, forgive me for my ignorance, but I've never stood in the welcome check there. So when someone comes in to bring in some demolition or whatever, what's the process of activating the scale? Do you push a button, they get on the scale?
Yes.
And then you write down their
Gross weight.
Their gross weight. Okay. Prior to that, when they come to the shack there and say, I need to be weighed, or I've got some demolition here, can't we say, okay, you've got something that you write the gross weight on, you can just say, I need a driver's license number, please. Have another column write that there, or I need a plate number, then you know who the contractor is or who the vehicle is licensed to. It's just, it's not invasive by saying, I gotta have your license. You're not gonna take my license, that type of thing. It's quick to get a driver's license number. Usually it's six or seven numbers. It's, just a thought.
No, it's a good thought, because that's what this form I wrote, a draft, so we can do just that.
Yeah.
Taking the driver's license right now is just something I was doing, sort of.
Yeah, just to get something in the works.
Yes.
Understood,
That's all.
understood. But
But
I
we
completely
need to formalize
understand
that.
the invasive part
Yes.
of that. And it immediately gets a standoffish.
Or the, like, I forgot my license, I have to drive all the way back home is the,
And again.
Just a plate number, not a
People
conflict.
who may have some issues about identifying themselves and surrendering that type of information to a non-law enforcement officer.
I'm going to just interject real quick, because I'm trying to figure out, so the reason that we brought this to the board on previous meetings was the whole concept of a camera, and what does that mean for the public? And we determined that we already had signs that said we had cameras, like, no one seems to care, it's not a huge deal. But I believe that this is something that falls kind of within operations.
Thank you.
And so,
Thank you.
Breedy,
I agree.
vet it out, figure out what you think works well. The board has already indicated that a camera is something we would like to see installed there. And then how you want to manage the inflow of those style of operations, just keep the board informed of what it is that you're going to do. And if we have significant concerns, we'll let you know.
Yep.
Yep. Got it?
That's good.
On the fee schedule, there was, because I'm wicked smart, like, it took me forever to realize that down with the mattresses, what we're talking is $14 each or $24 for a set. Man, that took me like 5 minutes to figure out what that actually meant. Thank you, Beth. There was some question about, because that's in relation to the demolition debris increase that we did. Is that a reasonable fee to charge folks for that material? And you had some thoughts on that?
Yes, when we met Friday with members of the executive committee, it was my suggestion that this price is in line with what it costs for handling and the operational costs and how they impacts the landfill and managing that. We want to have a deterrent, especially for commercial haulers. Residential, bringing in a mattress, more than likely might happen once in a decade or two. I don't know. This is Maine. It might be a little different. I don't know how quick people change out their king and queen size beds, but they are designed to last decades. Isn't that right for most quality beds? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Well,
I mean-
maybe I'm an oddity. I've had mine since 2008, so I don't know. But again, the impact that mattresses are having on our landfill, especially when you think about the issues we're having with spontaneous combustion of fires, and the fact that landfills and mattresses not being quartered or grinded or anything tend to float back up. We're having some issues. So I think this fee is in line. That's just my professional opinion, if not even a little higher. If not even a little higher, especially for commercial. Especially for people who are bringing, whose job it is to collect them and bring them and dump them. Those commercial haulers are bringing, should pay a commercial rate versus residential, in my opinion. Yes, yes. Yes, sir. That's just my thought, because they are a detriment to any landfill.
It's very difficult to determine the commercial versus residential, like, it's not like
Oh,
such a
it's-
big
it's-
operation here, so you've just got people coming in with a pickup truck, even if they're coming from a business, sometimes it'll be a pickup truck full of mattresses or something, it's not like that easy to distinguish between commercial and,
Well, I would just, from my experience as I've differentiated commercial and residential, I can tell what that is, even if someone's coming in a pickup truck. If they have 5 mattresses, that's not coming from their house.
It's a business, so I think we're just clarifying, commercial haulers don't bring them in, like our regular commercial haulers that haul trash
No, it's
don't
the
normally bring
businesses
us
that
a
bring them in,
mattress.
is that right?
Yeah, yes.
Well,
it would
I'm
be like
saying,
a hotel would bring them in.
commercial retail.
Right.
Someone bringing in a twin mattress or something because their children are no longer children or they've gone to college is one thing. We can kind of get that. That might just be strapped to the top of the sedan or maybe in the back of a station wagon or SUV. Someone coming in with 6 to 7 mattresses, that's in bulk, that's something else. And that's easy to identify, and of course, there's another way to do that. You can just ask them where did it generate from.
I don't know if we can take in 67 mattresses at a time, no matter what, right?
Six
It's
or
6 to
7.
Oh, okay, sorry.
6 or 7.
Okay.
So you're suggesting a higher rate for residential and a different rate
No,
And then
a lower rate for residential.
lower than what's posted here?
Well, I'm thinking we need to stay here.
And what is here, I see two numbers down here, says current pricing at $10 for a spring twin and $14 on that. Which number are we on?
It was current until Monday.
Yes, now it's 14.
Now they're the.
Reflect, so just to ground everyone in what the question that's being asked of us is, so the demo debris was increased as per what the board did, sent out to the select boards, and then the select boards approved them. So the demo increase is already done. The mattresses is a reflection of that, because the mattresses do go to the same place, but it's not, it's got its own separate line.
No.
No. So I believe that the question in front of us is, are we okay with just approving it as it is, or do we want to go further on altering this, specifically the mattresses, or do we just want to approve it as it is?
So you're asking if the 14, 21, 28, 35 is to be approved by us here now, or recommendations from the manager? If he, I hear him saying he thinks it should be something different. So clarify what we're working on here. We're working on this list on the left to approve, and Brady, what you saying should be higher or lower?
What I'm saying is what we have listed here, it should be approved tonight. I'm not prepared at this point. I don't believe it's fair to talk about going into a workshop and talking about anything. I'm just saying that maybe in the future, as I get my arms around things, because I want to bring what the real true impacts and costs are and what the volumes are, and I don't know that at this point.
So this is the only thing on this list that's being considered for change tonight?
Oh, wait.
No, that's what I was gonna clarify
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
And I apologize, they're like gray. I printed them, but I didn't realize they didn't come out red. So what is changing tonight is the first item of demo and dirty demo wood has gone to 7 cents from 5 cents. Leaves, grass, and plant matter has gone from $1 to $1.50. Couch recliner, sleep couches, large furniture, also 7 cents. They go in the landfill generally. And then stump disposal was changed from 10 cents a pound to 14 cents a pound. And then mattresses, again, are the next item that go in the landfill, and that's why they increased proportionately as well, to the 140.
So, repeat, demo and dirty demo wood up. What's,
Demo,
leaves
leaves and grass,
plant up.
couch, recliner,
Couch
sleep,
recliner up.
and
What
stump disposal,
Is stump, where is stump disposal?
right after
Right on the
couch.
Oh, yeah, stump disposal.
Those are all demo items,
And then that whole block of mattresses.
and all the mattresses.
Got it. So, looking for a motion to change those 4+ mattresses. Yes, sir. I move that we change those.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Do you want to approve all the changes, though?
Yes.
Okay,
All 4.
As presented.
okay.
Moving to change demo and dirty wood to 7 cents, leaves to $1.50, couch to 7 cents, stump disposal to 14 cents, and 4 numbers of the mattresses, 14, 21, 28, and 35.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? That's all those opposed?
I didn't think that we were gonna change it again this evening, but it had been done, it hasn't recently, don't we revisit it every year?
This is just a,
Yep, basically, every one of those is a reflection of what the select boards approved for the CDD. Because they go in a very similar area or the exact same area as the CDD, because we increased that rate, all of that cascaded down through these other items. Does that, but you still want to be recorded as voting against it? Okay, great. So that was Mike Brown, Bob, Deb, Allison, Dave, Kern, Owen in favor, and Wendy opposed. All right, moving on to item I, the fire event. Okay, so we haven't seen each other in a while, have we? I sent you all out an email a little while back, trying to give an update about that. I'll go over very briefly the actual event, and then if we want to talk more about some of the recommendations that came out of that, I would just ask that we kind of, we'll throw them out there. Maybe we won't discuss them ad nauseum because we're not at a place to where we're going to take action on some of these items, but keeping the board informed, and then as these actions get formulated better, we'll bring them to the board with supplemental information. So hotspot right before our meeting where we hired Buriti, that turned into a more significant hotspot. We were in contact with Rockport PD or fire the whole time. It did turn into a smoking mass. We put our plungers in. We pumped gobs and gobs of water. Our fire suppression driver thingies. We called up Fariello's. We called up JBI. We got folks out there to assist us. Everyone, it all went well, other than the fact that it was a significant hotspot that did eventually grow to roughly a 30-foot by 30-foot smoking mass with, as Beth has related it to me, 6-foot flame shooting out of it. So the plunger injector system was swapped out for a massive sprinkler system that did suppression. I think it was 3, if not 4 days of pretty constant suppression of that. Covered the whole thing up eventually with dirt. So by Monday, it started to become a fire on Saturday. Sunday, it grew to something bigger. And by Monday, JBI Fariello's were there. We dumped, as soon as we smothered it, it went right out. DEP was notified, and so DEP came out, and so did Steve Patch from CV and Mahar. I was not there for that. Audra was on site with both DEP and CV and Mahar. They powwowed about it and have offered some recommendations on things that we can do for future items for fire suppression. And do you want to talk about that meeting, or do you want me to just keep rolling with it? So where we're at today is, I think Buriti had noticed a hot spot recently as well. We've been monitoring that. It has not risen, from my understanding, to a level of concern as the other one was. Typically, my understanding is these items will then creep underground from one spot to another. So we continue to monitor it. We are trying to put probes in it to do constant temperature monitoring. It's all kind of like existing stuff, so we haven't spent much money on this, being more thoughtful about it. They want us to have like more significant probes in there, constantly taking readings at places of which are kind of known hotspots.
They're kind of,
Yeah, I'm gonna
you know,
quiet
like,
now.
ideal scenario would be, we have all of these probes established, and that they sort of automatically take temperature readings, and then when it gets to a certain level, we like flip a switch, and then the leachate's recirculated into the landfill. I don't think that's realistic in terms of cost or.
Well, no, it actually, it wasn't that pie in the sky. The automatic part of it, I felt, I was at at least one of those meetings walking around with the DEP, and the idea of recirculating the leachate made sense to Steve Patch, it made sense to DEP, it made sense, it's almost like why in the world would we be pumping clean drinking water into there when we
The thing is,
have.
I think they're gonna try to make us drill it, like, we've got a ton of wells there, but I don't think that our wells would accommodate what they want. That's the only
It
thing.
wasn't, they were really actually quite flexible. It was like however we could get that part of it done. They were concerned that sometimes main water gets to the point where they're like, we're gonna shut off your water, and they want us to have another source of water for fighting the fires. They seemed flexible on that part, and it not needing to be necessarily automated, but.
Oh, no, they were pretty open about whatever was gonna work, but I think since then, the company that, does the leachate pump, they've come and looked at it, and I don't think that that's gonna be technically feasible Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's bioremediation, without trying to harvest old landfill disposal site, but just flooding it with leachate is a good idea, especially the leachate that we have. Its nature is not as corrosive as it would be in a lined landfill with the leachate collection or conveyance system. But we can't use the existing leachate pump to do that. We're going to have to sink a separate well
Oh, right,
and design all of that to do for suppression and to keep the sponge of trash soaked. That would have to be different, and we'll have to talk to some engineers about that. Our current leachate pump, of course, is not working, but what's going on right now as an update to the possibility of any future fires is that we are taking temperatures every day. The landfill's natural temperature, just as it is for a human being, 98.6 degrees. Well, for a landfill, for decomposing waste, even in C and D, 120 to 140. So that's what it should be. We've seen temperatures as high as 150 today, 160 on Monday. Not necessarily a problem. Today we applied about 6 tons of dirt in one area to keep intake of fresh air to going into the voids that are feeding this smoldering, not necessarily a fire, but if you just imagine coals in a barbecue pit glowing. They haven't actually sparked up, but, they're glowing. We're looking at 1 to 2 inches of rain tomorrow. That's a good thing. So we've plugged in some of the areas that are drawing in air to feed it, and hopefully that'll keep it smothered. And with the rain, we think we'll be fine. And we're checking that and the CO2. One thing to keep in mind is that because this landfill is C and D and didn't receive the compaction that it should have, and the fact that C and D material doesn't degrade like patriciable waste, MSW, regular household trash, compaction is very important, because the breakdown and the decomposing waste is retarded. It's very slow. So therefore, it's somewhat static and can lend itself to voids and spontaneous combustion because of the heat, the natural progression of decomposition. So that said, we're going to have to work harder on compaction as we get it in there, and cover. We need to build that layer cake. We need to have so many feet of C and D, so many inches of topsoil, and it all needs to be compacted. And that's something I'll work on, and I'll have that coming to the board in future discussions.
One
And
thing,
I'd like to just clarify that this is a new hotspot. This is not where the fire was. This is another one.
Yes.
Just want to make that
Yep.
clear.
Yes.
And
As Owen said, they do tend to migrate. We've all heard about the coal fires that are burning in towns that have been burning for 100 years. But again, it's not necessarily a burn, it's just a smolder. And it's not necessarily a very hot one either. But we keep it wet. We talk about the leachate recirculation, fire suppression in the future. But right now, the way I'm going to address it is try to keep it smothered, choke it off with dirt, keep it compacted, and keep checking its temperature every day as you would check a sick baby who has a fever, and make sure that it doesn't get too high. And too high for us would be 180, 200 degrees. And of course, we're coming out of the summer peak, and we're going into the off-season, the fall and winter. And that's actually, Mother Nature's going to help us in that regard. And unless I'm wrong, have you had any fires during that time of the season?
yeah,
The year? You have?
During the fall?
February, we've had them in.
Oh my God, okay.
It's pretty deep, so.
No, I think everything that we've done is proactive and effective, and I'm just going to continue to do that. I'm put the sniffer in for the CO2, carbon dioxide, because that's part of fires. That's what it releases into the environment, and that was a little high as well. We had readings of 14 last week. Monday there were 19. So that does tell me, and I think I did send an email out, but I'm not sure if everybody got a chance to see it, just to let some of the folks at the state and some of the board members know that we're on top of it, including a couple of the pictures of the probe. And we do that every day, and we take those recordings down. So the state will know that we're on it and being diligent and doing our due diligence.
and the last thing on that, I don't want to take up much time. I have been talking with Tom Luttrell from Rockland about their mobile compactor. It just drives on top and it crushes everything down to a greater degree than the bulldozer does. He is currently pulling together what a potential lease agreement might look like, only for consideration. I've talked with a bunch of the employees about it. They're slightly skeptical, but if it works, then it would be awesome because it saves us headspace. We compact down, we can put more on top of it, and it works for fire suppression at the same time. So I'll end up shifting that to you. I'll shift Tom to you so you can deal with him, and then we'll bring to the board at some point potentially a lease agreement.
Absolutely, because I don't know what their skepticism is, but a compactor is exactly what we need.
Yep.
And I'll know exactly what kind of compactor we need and how effective it will be.
This report, did everyone get a chance to digest this awesome report? About the only thing that I had for notes on it was I did not think it was appropriate to reference the Rockland Fire Department in fire suppression. I actually don't think it's appropriate to reference any specific fire service and just leave it with local fire departments. We already have our existing relationships. They don't need to be laid out in a, yeah, okay, awesome. Yep, but other than that, it seemed to be great. And we don't have to make a motion to accept that report or anything. Does anyone have any, before we move away from the fire item, does anyone have any other questions about how the fire event went? We will be trying to, at some point, I assume, bring what a cost of a fire event looks like to us, primarily to maybe ground us in some of these additional bolt-ons for fire suppression and say, look, if we don't spend this money to stop fires, every time we have a fire, it costs us this much. So, but that's in the future. We'll bring those numbers at some point.
It will also be reflected on our expense report next time. We're not doing a current one. It was only 1 month long because we're working on last year. But we did start a new line, so that would be easily seen.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, Jody suggested that, or Dave did, I'm not sure which. But
Where's the money coming out
We
of?
started a new line in the for
3516.
fires in the budget.
No, you say you're
Yeah,
adding?
we put a line in for all of the expenses to go into that line, so we could easily find them.
I get that, but how, that changes the budget.
Right.
And who approved that?
I don't know, yeah, I guess Dave.
It happened right after
Budget
we.
categories without, maybe
Yeah.
I'm misunderstanding.
Yeah, that's my question. You started, I heard a new line is being added to collect.
We don't have anywhere to
costs.
put it if we don't, and we do add new lines regularly.
well,
I don't believe what she's saying is it's a new budget line in the Trio
Just a new line.
expense system.
Yeah.
New sub?
A way of just simply taking those expenses and in an easy to pull back up format. We haven't altered the budget per se.
Right, they'll probably be expensive.
I'm starting to understand a little bit about how Trio works, right? And what Jody does, because Phil does it right on the other side. All they're doing is creating a new spot in their system
Put it right now.
to where you can say, hey, this came here. Now, it can still get allocated to landfill development as per the budget.
It's a new sub account.
It's a way of just
Basically.
collecting all of these costs so we can better get our arms around it instead of grabbing it from 3 different places, primarily the landfill
And
development.
as they may be ongoing, we just weren't sure that, and we
But
wanted
we're
to keep
paying
it
it from landfill development now,
Not
right?
all of it, I don't believe, but good, that's where it's the, where else are we gonna
We've-
grab it from?
We've already paid a bunch,
Yeah, we have.
so when I've signed off on those, I feel like it's always been landfill development. Is there another, when we talk,
So
when we
that's-
set the budget and we talk
Professional
about what we need to put
services or
in that
something?
line, we
That's
talk
where
about
it came from
fires.
in the budget, but I guess they just created another line.
Sub account.
It's not really
it's not a-
sub-accounts, like
it's not a-
flagging it as a,
It's
like
kind
an-
of like when we create restricted accounts to be able to show
Yeah,
us spending money on specific.
but you're moving money from one part of the budget to the other.
it
will
doesn't
also
really
help
sound like
out
that
at
to
the
me. It sounds
end
like
of the
it's
year.
more just like, we don't want, because we don't want it just to be, at the end of the year, we're just gonna see landfill development, that could be anything. We actually wanna know how much of that was fires, so it's still under landfill development, but flag, otherwise we have no way of knowing which of those things were fire-related. But it still sounds like we might overspend this year our landfill development line.
We're not there yet, but it's definitely a possibility. Or we just avoid building a road.
Many things to
All
consider.
right, any other questions on the fire? Awesome. Moving on to executive committee report, item J. I'm going to take just a brief second and really thank the executive committee for everything that they've done to help and assist me over these last couple of months. Working with Beth, coming into the facility, working with employees, counseling employees, approving things. You all did a really, really good job, and I thank you very much for it. Probably the only thing that kept my sanity was knowing that there were like other people that would share in the insanity with me. So I appreciate the towns for allowing those folks to have the time necessary to commit to it. I think I've said it in basically all my emails. As far as the public knew, items came in, items went out. Everyone had a smile on their face. It was awesome. Wasn't easy necessarily through that period of time, but everything kept flowing. So thank you all very much. Anything else from other executive committee? Do we have a report? I think at our last meeting, we just kind of celebrated that Baridi was here and had like a dance party. All right, and Baridi, we had said that under item J, you had quotes for the pump, update about runners, which I feel we've already discussed. But are there items of which you want to bring to the board's attention, not for approval, but to kind of lay the groundwork for future meetings?
Yes, yes. Our leachate pump, as you know, is not working. We did have it up for maybe a few minutes, maybe an hour last week and again this week, but it actually has a mechanical issue, not electrical issue. Mr. Haggerty of Plumbing and Heating Pumps has given us a quote today for replacement motor and some of the work, and he even has given us another option for a larger pump. I'm going to go with the initial one that he's recommending. We're already looking at about $8,000 if we don't change anything, and $10,000 if we actually have him to come in, because he mentioned that the casing that supports the pump, of course, is 8 feet high, and that's very difficult to work with. So he's talking about welding a new casing on there. So when he comes in and does any repair with this future new pump, because we're going to have to get one, and we're going to have to get other quotes, I understand, where everything can be taken loose in one piece and worked on, instead of having to climb up and pull all that up with a crane or something like that. I think it's a good idea. He's also talking about how stainless steel is impacted just chemically through being exposed to the environment, and how this casing is stainless steel, and it tends to want to give and come loose. So he's talking about some type of casing that he can put in place, weld in place, that wouldn't be as temperamental as stainless steel. But we have to get that pump working, because as I understand, our berm wall breadth, Davis said it's 103 feet,
Yeah, the height of that.
the height, and right now we're at 93, and we're concerned about, what is the name of the lake?
Lily Pond.
Lily Pond. We don't want to inundate any leachate into Lily Pond. Right now, we're close, but we're not in danger of that, but we
We're
do
at
need.
93 right now, and we can't pump anything?
That's right. Now, what we are doing is every day we're going out and we're turning the pump on now.
Oh.
Frank Haggerty says that if we can turn it on, and if it turns off, go back and turn it on until he turns off. But I have to fast track this. We have to get us a pump in here. Now, I don't know what the process is for just yet about purchasing. I would assume we're going to need 1 or 2 more quotes.
So it goes to, anything over $5,000 goes to the Finance Committee for approval, so,
All right.
and then,
I will add that Dave Bolstridge suggested that we also contact Atlantic Plumbing, I believe it is. Last week, middle of the week, I sent them all the same information and have not heard back from them. We can follow them up and
Yes.
possibly get another quote, but Mr. Haggerty is one of the original people that worked on the.
Who did the
he's-
controls on the pump?
Controls. Well, he's working there, we pulled up all that information.
But who just did they just put controls on that pump? The same pump?
That's Summit. Summit's work is on pause. It's been on pause since before the fire, which is, so the end of June. When they came, there was still 7 or so feet that they determined. There was a question of how high the well casing was gonna go. And Summit has not been back. Dave Bolsher's been talking with them regularly. Mr. Haggerty also knows, I think his name is, I want to say Tom. He knows Tom from Summit, and they've been in contact already and talked about what's happening out there. Dave Bolstridge was there last week as well. And so it's been a very good, concise, coordinated effort to find out what to do in this situation. By the time we got someone here, it had been down just about 2 weeks. So now we're in our third week of being down. And it is my understanding that there are a very limited amount of people who can do this. So, I only got the 2 names.
Yes.
And I think there may be others, but in this economy right now, it's very hard to get people to come. They may come and they may show, but then it takes a long time to get information, and then they may or may not be as familiar. But this particular company is very familiar with our site and has worked with us before.
Yes, and one thing about this now is that now that Mr. Haggerty has come in and assessed the condition of the pump and made a determination, and also provided us today with a quote, I'm going to use his quote and information as a spec. So anyone else we ask to bid, we can just give them this information. It's already been done for us. And find out in Atlantic and say, because with Haggerty, we had to get the pump, we had to find the information, had to get some numbers, he had to actually go in and make some determinations. But he's already examined it, he already has given us a diagnosis and a prognosis for getting it repaired. So I still need to get the other quotes, as Allison said, because this is going to be a minimum of $10,000. But it has to be done, we have to get it done quickly. And yes, if it is limited, then I'm not going to just be satisfied with a call and a voicemail and nobody returning. I'll drive over there and give them the written spec and say, what this costs me to do this. For this type of pump, the same model or something similar, and we'll just go with that. If I have to send out email or just actually just go up there to the place. But I have something now that I didn't have before. So I think that helps us to get where we need to get, because
He may elaborate on that a little.
yes, we do need to get this thing done. I didn't know if there was any type of protocols that allow us just to go with, because of the nature of the situation.
We don't always have to do it, so what the bylaws say is that it doesn't always have to be a multiple quote situation, because sometimes that's not realistic.
Yes.
It's just, it has to, anything over $5,000 goes to the finance committee to be reviewed. So that's where you could say, this is, I got this quote, it was determined that there was not another option.
Well, that's
there
good,
was.
because Haggerty was out there and we talked, and because of my experience with leachate pumps and leachate systems, submersibles and all that, I'm actually surprised this quote is this low. I expected it was going to be double this.
It's a pretty small pump.
And he does seem like a very ethical and integral man. And what we were talking about, he knows what he's talking about, he knows what he's doing, and I agree with everything that we talked about from my own experience and everything. So I wouldn't feel any problem going, and then the fact that he's familiar and he's aware with recommending that we go ahead and let him come on in here, pull this trigger and get this thing done.
I probably would want to hear what Dave Bolstridge had to say, or,
Sure. And
Definitely say,
and if everybody's satisfied, but we just, if I can't get a second number.
let's
as
Get a finance
treasurer and finance director, try to keep Allison informed of some of these things, especially if you know you're going to be over into a price of which the finance committee's need to be to convene on that.
So that's Wendy and Deb and I, and we can talk after the meeting about getting a finance committee meeting
We're
together.
pretty flexible, yeah.
All right.
Is there anything else that you wanted to give an update on?
Yes.
No. I think that it's all operational. We do have a picture of what the pump looks like. I do have the quote if anybody would like to take a look at it afterwards, but now I think that I've prolonged the meeting long enough.
Before we move on from executive committee report, I am remiss. Mr. Bill Post is the new town manager for the town of Rockport. Wanted to introduce him. Bill, do you want to take 30, 45 seconds to introduce yourself?
No, but I will. I think most everybody knows me, I think, but, so I've been in local government for 24 years. I have a master's in public administration. I've managed transfer stations in another community before as well, a multi-town transfer station, so I'm very familiar with what we're looking at that has inert landfills as well, so I understand what we're looking at there, but I look forward to working with everybody.
Great,
As do I.
Welcome to the funny farm.
I'm glad to know I'm not the only newbie. You started August 1st, and I started August 16th.
Yes, yep.
All right, Strategic and Capital Planning Committee report. You're the chair, aren't you?
I don't have a chair.
You're sitting in one. So,
We don't have a chair in this committee.
Says it in the bylaws who the chair has to be.
I don't know who the chair is.
You should be chair, you should be chair.
So you can report, right?
What?
Just report anyway.
Okay, we didn't do anything.
we didn't do anything. But we thought about it a lot. All right, moving on.
We should. We don't get things done if somebody's not leading a charge. We don't have a charge leader right now.
Brady and I have talked about hauling.
I get it, but somebody should be leading the charge for the committee like every other committee does.
That's
And
why I
has a
called
chair.
you the chair.
Well, then designate such. It's a simple thing.
Let's first check the bylaws and make sure it doesn't already say who the chair has to be.
It does, I think it's the one committee that does it.
Yeah, we've got a plan. We've got a plan. See you at the next meeting.
I'll be there.
Item L, Finance Committee update. Do we have anything from the Finance Committee?
Well, I don't know, how do we want to do it with the recommendations from the executive committee on the unaudited financials?
You wanna do
I have
that
some,
during
I mean,
Ed?
I think Deb and I have some concern, or probably Wendy would too. Was the proposal from the executive committee to approve something tonight in terms of pulling all of that from as far as I can tell, we're in a bit of a difficult situation. I mean, not a difficult, but not a very advantageous financial situation is how I would put it. We have quite a large funding gap, and to pull all of that from the unassigned fund balance would put us below what is recommended. I think we'd need to go back and parse out what can be pulled from equipment reserve, because in our previous finance committee meetings, we'd already designated several things that when we approved expenditures, we knew that was going to overdraw certain lines, and we said, okay, well, for the time being, since anything from equipment reserve is going to need to get board approval, it would make sense to just overspend these lines, and then maybe at the end of the year, we'll have money left over in other lines, and it'll all work out. But I think we should go back, and our equipment reserve is quite healthy, so.
Can someone, maybe David or Beth or someone, do we need to take action on that tonight, or is the Finance Committee, because we've closed that year out, we have a negative, we overspent.
Well, no, not exactly.
I mean, we
kind of
under-revenued.
We under-collected in revenue, more so than
Right.
overspending.
Net's down $65,000.
That's true.
Yes,
Net.
yes.
Yeah,
Net,
so-
net, 65, 66.
Came out, it seems like that stuff would be, make sense to send to the finance committee, and then at the
I
next
just want to make
meeting-
sure, because I'm slightly delinquent here as far as, okay, I know we've done our organizational stuff, we've closed out our year. Is there some official action of which we need to take at this meeting, or do we have the flexibility to have finance look it over? Because we all looked it over, and this was kind of our best recommendation
We
on
all, meaning the executive?
the
committee?
executive committee. And I'm happy to have you all
We've got plenty of
make it.
time for them
Okay,
to do this.
great.
Okay, that's, because we'd seen that email about what the executive committee said, and it seemed a little bit like it was urgent, like you wanted to be able to have board approval to do this so that could happen before it got sent to the auditor. But if we could just have,
I think we need to discuss this on the financials, because I got some questions on the financials and what's going forward into FY20.
So that's under N, right?
Yes, correct.
So we're kind of jumping ahead.
That's correct.
All right, so then do we want to fly through governance and have a full financial Beth, you wanted to say something?
I just want to make the point that we did start our audit. We are in our audit. We started it last Thursday and Friday.
Yeah.
And they have asked for information. I have recently pulled together, for our capital listing that we do every year. I've, for the first time, seen the one that RHR Smith uses. And they asked me to pull together some of those larger capital expenses that we had, which basically amounted to equipment and maintenance repair items. So I have pulled some of that together this week, so there is some information around, but they are very interested in what lines we're gonna use.
So I guess this gets back to some of the other issues that we've had where it's, with the auditors, it feels to me that the auditors work for the board of directors and that every year it just kind of happens that they're sort of intermingled with all these other, maybe with the town of Camden stuff too. And before you know it, all of this is happening and nobody, it's not even clear who their primary point of contact is, but it should be, somebody with the board should be involved in all this. It would logically be the finance committee. There should be an audit kickoff meeting where they sit down with members of the board. And that was what I heard from Ron when I spoke with him before too, that they've even felt that it was a little bit strange, like that where's the connection with the board? And so,
Well, I do wanna just say.
I'm
that
not saying
we-
it's anybody's fault,
No,
but we've
no,
got to
but-
figure out a process so that.
We are not intertwined with Camden on any level. We were asked to have our audit begin in November, at which point I said that can't happen, because we need to have our draft budget ready, so that we can move forward as we are, directed by the bylaws, and so that towns can have our figures. So when they relooked at dates, that's what came up. We'd asked for some
So
time
who do
early
they
September,
contact?
but the contact is Jody, because she holds
It's
the
the
key to
Camden
all the
Finance
financial-
Director, who
Yeah.
also,
She's our bookkeeper.
I
She's
know, but
not
she
just a
doesn't know, and she's repeatedly said that she doesn't know anything really about Midco Solid Waste in terms of anything beyond the.
She's learned a lot in a
But she's
year.
not in any way, she's not. a
Can
person
we,
you
can
hold
we solve
accountable.
this by ensuring that at a minimum, the treasurer, if not the entirety of the finance committee, gets CC'd on all communications about our ongoing audit?
Sure, I
And
just
that
think.
communication would also include, because I don't disagree, I think that it
only in
is
the collection
confusing.
stage.
It would be great for you all to be more involved. And Deb?
I agree with Allison that, she's the treasurer of this organization. She's the chair of the finance committee. I think that she should be involved with the audit from day one. And it should not just be an administrative thing. Jody does a great job, but Jody's not at the finance committee meeting. She doesn't know how, when we approved
Right.
certain expenditures at the finance committee meeting, that we made these assumptions that we would see how the year ended, as Allison said, and we would take from a healthy equipment reserve certain monies for items that had to be replaced or had to be repaired. And none of that, it all seems like it gets lost in the process. But if she's involved all along, it's not gonna get lost in the process.
I don't disagree at all. So I would.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that, going forward, all communications from the auditor about scheduling and questions need to include contact with, do you want the entirety of your committee or just you?
I think just Allison, because if Allison needs us to weigh in or needs to, bring us in, I feel very confident that Allison will do that when she needs to.
You okay with that?
I think it's perfectly logical, yes. Sometimes when it becomes too many people, then you don't know who's accountable. So if I can be CC'd on things and then I'll bring in the finance committee when necessary.
Any board members have any issues with that?
This is the way it should be done.
Yeah, no, makes all the sense in the world. Anything else that we want to discuss under finance committee update?
We'll be meeting soon.
Item M, governance committee
Okay, we're gonna
update.
fly through the governance committee. Wait
Handout.
a minute, did I give you my?
I was wondering what you were.
Where's my piece? Oh, no, here, go ahead, pass it around. Beth, thank you very much for bringing copies of that. I'm not sure that we have enough, but we may be just a couple shy, so
Looks like
somebody
we have
may have to
enough.
look on.
I don't really need.
But I
one.
did send this out to a number of you guys before the last meeting, which I couldn't make, but then that was the one that was canceled, right?
Correct.
So, anyway, some of you did receive it by email.
You
The
do-
bottom
you should
line
have
is,
one,
the
Randy.
governance committee has a lot to do, And we need to, be kicking into gear more than we have been, but there have been, a lot of other things going on. So, but having said all that, there are things that we have accomplished, which is figuring out what kind of organization this organization really is, because you might recall that that was pretty up in the air previously. And so, so I've set forth here, all those things that we now know as facts. Of course, we were formed by the Maine Interlocal, or pursuant to the Maine Interlocal Cooperation Act, in terms of statutes. It's a nonprofit public waste corporation, et cetera, et cetera. I've set that forth through 1 to 4. I won't go over it again. But nailing this down, we've always acted as though we were, conducted our affairs as though we are open. We are subject to Maine's FOAA laws on open meetings and records, open to inspection, et cetera. And we've confirmed that that is in fact the case, and so we need to continue to make sure that we conduct ourselves in that way. We are, and this is one of the big things that we needed to confirm, subject to the same limitations and investments as the municipalities who formed us to begin with. And so that is going to be something that we're going to be soon meeting again with Camden and Wealth Management on our investments, and that's coming up, I don't know, the next week or two, I think. So the governance committee now will move on to tackle other issues, and we will discuss what our next ones are. We have policies. There aren't very many policies in writing that the corporation has, and we need to get a handle, Brady, on those policies that we do have, policy manuals, just a whole lot of that kind of structural thing we will work with you with.
And when we talk about policy, we're talking about standard operating SOPs?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And, and policies that are set by this board in terms of,
Governance?
Governance, yes, that's what I'm talking about.
All right.
And also, as discussed earlier tonight, there are some towns that are not happy with, and it just makes sense for us to review the interlocal agreement and our bylaws. And I know that that's something that some of you, some of us really are anxious to do. And we will tackle that as well, so we will decide, I think, we'll set up a meeting date and we'll decide what our next item to tackle is going to be. But are we still okay with meeting before the regular meeting time? I mean, now we have we always have a 6:30 start now, right, Owen? Is that our normal? Correct. 6:30 start. So are we okay with meeting at 5 on that same date or not?
I am.
You are still, and you're,
Yeah, I'm
okay,
always in,
okay.
Makes me a little grouchy by the end of these meetings, but it's fine, it's.
Okay, so we will just assume that as a matter of course that we have them at 5. Sometimes we got preempted because,
Right,
because-
that is the
sorry,
problem.
because of the hiring process, et cetera, we needed to have executive sessions and et cetera, et cetera. But hopefully, we're all just kind of even keel on that now, and nobody's gonna preempt our 5 o'clock time.
No.
Nobody, Mr.
Nobody.
Chair.
Nobody not,
No workshops.
nobody not.
Workshops at the end of the
That
meeting.
is the flown through governance committee.
Thank you very much.
We're that cool.
That's good.
3 minutes.
Only 8.
I've been learning.
Awesome. Any other items on that? Great, seeing none. Item N is financials. It's like my most favoriteest part.
I bet.
Wicked.
Yeah, I mean.
I felt like we had a good conversation going before. Do we want to continue that conversation? We referenced item N a lot. Who wants to start? 'Cause I
Just fundamentally, as I look at the papers, we're down about $60-something thousand in last year's financial, round numbers. One is, I know that's gonna be audited and blah, blah, blah. Where is that 65 gonna go into next year's budget, and how is it covered?
So there's a few different options. So probably there's 35 of it that we can take care of very easily because, when we talked about, there was 80,000 in,
Yes.
it was formally referred to as working capital, but really what it was the difference between the 12% that we needed in our
Yes.
unassigned fund balance to
Yes.
keep that at a healthy level, and what we had total in that amount of money. So there was an $80,000 difference. We used 45,000 of it in FY '20 to keep our assessments down.
Right.
So we have 35 left.
So that'll
So we have
cover half.
$35,000 we can use without eating into our fund balance, staying at the 12% that we'd like to keep it at.
Right.
And I think the rest of that is what Allison and the Finance Committee would like to look at.
Sure.
In terms of the equipment reserve and some other sources.
Perfect. In the question, in the financials, and the revenue side, there's a carry forward of about $11,500. It wasn't carried forward. What's the carry forward revenues?
From FY '19,
19, 11,000.
or sorry, FY '18 to '19.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's just a line item that's confusing because it says carry forward in revenue, but it wasn't carried forward to revenue. It wasn't credited to the revenue account. I just don't know what that is. Maybe you want to take it back and question it later. It's,
That can all be part of what we do with the Finance Committee.
okay, it's just item 60, line 67 under revenue.
Yeah, it's, I'm,
Yeah. Yeah,
I got a funny feeling it's just mislabeled.
No,
I don't,
no, it was carried forward.
Carry forward.
usually carry, when you carry something forward, it's a line that gets carried
Yeah, I thought it
forward.
was like expense lines that we didn't
It was money to stay in the expense line. right?
encumbrances.
Yeah.
This is not an expense line, this is revenue.
No, but
Right.
I've
Well, it's in
totally
landfill
heard, when Jim
development,
was here, you talked
We
about
carried
carry
forward
forward, wouldn't he?
$11,583 to use on a project, I believe, we were planning to do, which
okay,
was the
so
road.
typically when we do carry forwards, like
Just
with a town,
say
it
we
would
can-
be like for a specific account, it wouldn't be its own
Exactly.
line.
Look back in the
Right.
minutes, you're gonna see that Jim asked for several carry forwards.
Yeah.
Landfill development was approved, I believe a couple others
Oh, it was
were
landfill
not.
development, but that doesn't mean it goes there. It's,
Right, it should go into
it
the
goes in the,
landfill
it
development
doesn't
as a-
like get to become a slush, unlabeled, like, whatever fund.
Well, it has to be attached to a project that's already in the
Yeah,
works.
that's where it
Project's
went.
bringing in money.
But wouldn't it be carried
No,
forward?
it would have been an
in the same-
unfinished project from fiscal year 18 that was supposed to come into fiscal year
Confused.
19 and be spent. That's what that $11,000 was. As it turns out, we did not overspend that line because I think a lot of the projects were put on hold.
Was that amount
What's
carried
it under?
forward to FY '20?
Landfill, yeah.
I think we asked that question if it could be, but I think we were under the impression that doesn't work that way. It's supposed to be spent.
have-
It goes into the undesignated fund. and
A
comes out.
bond, and you've got
That's-
money you haven't
that's where it
spent,
came
you
in, and
carry
that's where it was
forward
supposed to go
into the
out.
following year, but it doesn't go away.
Right.
Okay. So we'll just clarify it.
I think that's what we
I
want.
don't
I
know
mean,
the
we've-
revenue side, but.
David Kinney already found it, so it came in on the revenue side as a carry forward for $11,587.
77. You can, the number matches up with landfill development under
Carry forward,
expenses,
67.
under operational costs.
Right,
Spent, unspent?
and it
Well,
just
it
We
kinda
just-
doesn't really
We took
matter,
an excess revenue and we
because-
plopped it there to try to offset.
no, it was carried forward for an expense that we thought we were going to have.
Just thought, so,
Did not get spent. The road.
so you guys, how, when you
And
just said that you did that, what,
No,
No,
we didn't
okay.
do that.
I must have heard it wrong.
That was,
It-
Jim
yeah.
requested the board
Right.
that he
Right.
carry that money forward, and you approved it, or whoever the board was at the time approved it.
And I think he wanted engineering as well, and we said no to that.
But
We said
it's
no
kind
to
of a
something
moot
else.
point because of the fact that we're $65,000 in the red.
That's true.
So it doesn't matter if it was
I
spent
was
or
more
not,
concerned what
because-
happened with FY '20. I'm more concerned if that was carried forward into FY '20.
No, we haven't done it, we're not proposing any carry forwards because of
Alright.
the negative $65,000.
Yeah, I already tried that.
All right.
I was super excited to carry forward money we didn't have.
Creative cutting 101.
That's why I think.
Unless you want that 65 to turn into like a bigger number, the negative.
It'd be funny math.
I do want to report to the board that all of the back MSW money that was to be collected, that was in, had a payment plan on it from our major haulers, has in fact been paid in full now. It, came into this year, some of that money.
Is it already recorded here?
is not in the some of it is in fiscal year 19, some of it is in
Is it
fiscal year
already
20.
recorded on the statements? Is that income already stated in the FY 19, 18, 19 paper we
Yes,
have here?
what was collected in 19 is in there.
Okay.
Also, I want to point out that at the end of the year, on June 30th, I am no longer able to make deposits, right? So that's the rule, can't make any more deposits. So you can continue to pay bills for a couple of 3 weeks, but you can't take the money in. And in this particular year, and it can roll any year to year,
Why?
it's just, I couldn't tell you why, Bob, it's just for 7 years, that's what I've been told.
Isn't this this is a cash basis or accrual basis?
I believe it's cash.
If it's cash, that would make sense. If it's accrual, it doesn't make
And
sense.
so I can tell you this year that we got a very large check from our largest hauler right after that
That-
closed,
that-
to the,
So
to
that
about
br- that-
$30,000.
That
So,
brings a question to the finance committee to consider being on an accrual basis.
well, those accounts can roll pretty large, so, but it happens every year. It could be last year we were more, I would have to go back and look, but I'm just saying that disappointingly, that happened this year. So, well, you're taking in $30,000 more
Yeah, that's
for
why I said that the
MSW
issue-
than
issue
that
is-
just went in 2 days later.
The issue is cash versus accrual, and maybe we should think about coming up into the 21st century.
I'm not
by
sure
doing
as
accrual.
what our corporation, I'm not
Maybe you'd
sure.
like to come to the finance committee
I
meeting.
would love to,
Okay.
but at your
And I'm
request,
not sure what tree, I'm just not sure.
I'm gonna
what
have to
base-
look
probably, I
that
think,
up a
cash.
little bit before we argue about it tonight.
happy to.
I understand, I've never understood why you can take in,
Sure, I
get slammed
understand.
shut on money.
Oh, I agree with you, it's tough, but an accrual
It's
basis.
tough this year.
Go back and adjust it, right?
Well, it just means we may be a little ahead this year.
Yeah, that's cool, good point.
So what I'm a little confused about is so we have this large number of in the overspent lines for hauling and tipping at Eco Maine. So if I'm understanding correctly, that cost us more than we thought. And then somehow
That's correct.
we also, on the revenue side, for the paper bag and the per ton fee, we also have large uncollected balances, so we didn't bring in as much trash. Like there, it looks like we didn't bring in as much as we thought we were going to.
Correct.
We've been,
So, but the way we worked with the yellow bags and the per ton fee and all, that's all designed that's to basically mean that we can't lose in that area.
that
36,000.
even when you take out what we missed when we did the rate change and didn't capture the commercial people, there's still a significant difference there. And
It would suggest that our
I
fee,
feel like
MSW fees are way off.
we projected it out wrong. We had to project, and we've, the executive committee and Brady and Beth have been talking about this. I still, just speaking for myself only, I still don't have a clear picture as to why that happened. And as Audra said in the beginning, it's not necessarily that expenses were over that much, it's that revenues were under. And I still don't know why.
That's a line that's supposed to, when revenues are down, expenses are supposed to be
Did all
down.
of our community, outreach on reduce, reuse, recycle, compost, did it all work? Are people really bringing in that much
no,
less
'cause
trash?
Then we would have had to
Because
tip
then
less
there's that.
trash at Eco Maine. If that were the case, then we would have also brought less trash to Eco Maine.
Right.
Not
So
just
I
taking
don't-
in less
I
trash.
don't know, I don't have a good answer. And
I
we've
mean,
kind
we
of
have to-
talked and thought about this a handful of times, and I still am not clear as
And
to
also
why.
none of,
That would suggest that
none
our
of us
bag
were
fee is way too
involved
low.
in the projection, so we don't know the methodology that was.
I mean, I have some ideas.
We have to go back and calculate the bag fee, because we thought we've always,
If you look at your AR summary on page 2, you'll see that we
just have a
actually,
bunch of,
one of our accounts, which is our best customer, is a little bit behind. So they've actually been, I don't know if they had a billing, they did have a billing
Oh.
change at one point. We do it differently. And actually today, as I was doing some payables, I probably brought that,
hold on, so what are you saying, that we have how many thousands of dollars here?
That's just a little. So
I don't want to
when do
say
we start
names.
sending nasty grams?
What the heck?
It's not that, there's been a. Well, you also come into your busy season, so your account, your dollars go up per month. But, the one account there is
That's it,
something
right
that,
there.
I have just been recently looking at and saying, now, today, it's down $5,000, tomorrow I'll probably get another check for $4,000. So they roll with some pretty big checks. It's just, this is what it is on August
Accounts
23rd.
receivable in a cash basis is not recorded to the fiscal year in which it was accrued. If you're on an accrual basis, there would, $90,000 would have been accrued to FY 18-19, we wouldn't have had this issue.
Pays it, I mean, if he's paid it, this doesn't say it's paid.
Well, Beth is saying that it hasn't been paid, and she says she can't cash the check she's cashing. she
Got like a
receives now
$4,000
are
check, I
received
think.
Going to FY 20.
And I did just get, and generally, these are the amounts per month.
Hey, just one thing to throw out there, like, I think you can only use the 30 to 60 column to figure out last year. You can't,
So, and
we
those are
can't
the
look at the
amounts I get a
totals.
month.
Right, 60, let's look at the 60 column. What is the
Usually pay
60 column?
You said you received a check after
Yes,
6,
like,
3 days after she
Right.
closed,
and that how, what was the amount of
it's
that?
about 30.
30.
So do we need to be making,
And that was for MSW in its entirety. So that was for trash in its entirety. So I'm just saying that, you start looking at numbers, but this is our high season when we usually have a lot more activity and we are out there a little bit more. But
know
most
if
of
we
the
can let
accounts are
them
in good
carry
standing.
that? For our fiscal year, they've got to, I think they may need to, the commercial oilers may need to adjust our fiscal year with numbers like that. I mean,
You have to
It's
change.
just, I'm just
This
saying
looks-
that there is, you don't think about it, but there's big money that rolls here and there, and
Yeah.
when you look at it, when you look at something that's down $30,000 or whatever, then it's easy to see where it is. That's my point.
well, that's another good one for the finance committee, because that's, I mean,
And it's consistently rolling, so
This is
it's like
cash in
this
the
every
pool
year.
again. It's cash in the pool again, it's basic stuff, I didn't realize we were on a cash basis, that's antiquated.
Because
we couldn't make adjustments later.
Without the 30 days.
prepare their,
We can, but we can make adjustments later. I mean, you're not allowed to,
a lot of us start in January.
Cash basis, you're not,
Like, I start my budget
if it's truly a
Never
cash
been that way
basis.
though since I've been here,
Sure.
so, yeah.
preparing in January.
Good discussion.
Yeah.
Okay,
Anything
the-
else to add on that? I think,
It's not like
I
totally
think that the
down.
conversation was
It
great
doesn't
for
have
Baridi
this-
to understand a sense of the board, so Baridi, kind of let that discussion just go on and on, so you get a better sense of the board about some things that we want to be aware of and items to look at as it relates to maybe why we're
okay.
having
And just
discussions.
another quick thing, the projected savings from the dam, from the gut, our wastewater bills are not looking as low as we would have hoped them to look. And it is another issue that's concerning for this current budget, that since we did budget in a semi-lean manner for this year, it may be that we're going to have to do something. Because if we pull a little bit more from the unassigned fund balance now, and then we have these additional overruns that can't be taken from equipment reserve, it could mean we would have to look at asking the towns or borrowing or something, but we're getting a little bit dangerously low, so, anyway, I think we may have under budgeted for wastewater as well. That's just a back of our minds,
So,
dragons in the closet kind of thing.
the idea though is we will have a new pump and we'll be able to put in the automatic monitor, and hopefully that will improve for the rest of the year.
I'm not optimistic about that.
It's been a wet year.
The thing is, though, that for all these years before, it wasn't, none of it was, there was no automated anything. It was just Jim going out there and measuring, looking at how much it's rained and this and that, and being like, I think I can turn the pump down. I think I might be able to leave it off for a few days. It actually was done quite well, with a lot of knowledge and understanding of the environment and the way that rain works. And so he took every opportunity to turn that pump down as much as possible and to leave it off.
Logbook with me, right?
What?
He actually kept amazingly detailed records about what level everything was at and when he pumped and hertz and all that stuff.
He knew that that was a major budget impact, and that by focusing on that and getting that right and seeking every possible opportunity to keep that pump off, we saved ourselves a lot of money. The automated safety method, it's possible that that will not save us money. So we probably should have budgeted more for that. Anyway, that's it.
Any further discussion on financials? Seeing none, item O is adjournment. I will let the board know that anyone that does want to do a little bit of a linger longer to just have an informal discussion about what we might do post-2021 for where we take our MSW.
Where is that on the, I don't think that's appropriate, because that's some of, what if, that sounds like a quorum of people could be here, and it's not going to be filmed, and there aren't going to be minutes, and then it's,
Yeah, shouldn't that be part of the Strategic and Capital Committee's discussion, to bring something to the board to talk about in substance?
I'm cool with you shooting it down. I'm totally fine with
No,
it.
I just asking a question.
where is that on the agenda? It's not, right?
It's here.
Right after
Oh.
On the end.
workshop topic.
Fair enough.
It was an effort
It was
to
in last
try to
month's
have
agenda.
just some more robust discussion, so that when we do bring it to the board, more people are educated about, like, what are we gonna do when our EcoMaine contract runs out? Because they ask, we have a bit of time to think about it. EcoMaine does ask what our plan is.
Sure.
And we don't have a plan.
Sure.
And I know these meetings go a long, long time. And so it was just an attempt to see if we could try to make some forward progress on it, with some people having commitments and needing to go home, and other people maybe not, and they just want to sit here and talk about trash.
I think what we should do is put some flesh on the bone for something to sink your teeth into for the moving like that.
I like that.
Develop
And
a,
it'd be great if I could kind of cut up to speed.
Totally.
yeah.
And I do want to make a comment. I got a call from our hauler today, and he is wondering about our contract.
Come to
He-
talk to Bariti.
I got a call from the Warren Transfer Station last week,
Oh,
asking
Mark-
for our
Mark-
hauler's
Mark-
phone number, because they're looking at changing their hauling, or bidding their hauling, and possibly, and just doing a review of expenses, I think. But our hauler is looking at possibly relocating our driver to more closer to this area. So he is really asking that if we have any input to give him about that, for our long-term uses, he wanted some input.
Bob,
Just throwing it out.
I would ask that you maybe try to get strategic and capital improvement together
You got it.
and include Bariti on it.
Sure, he's on
Yep.
it.
Yeah, I like
Yep.
it in front of
Sure, ASAP.
ASAP, like you're thinking. All right, anything else before we go to item O, which is adjournment? Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
And, it sounds like a second to me. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all.
Are we off?